Welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker joining me via teleportation or Skype, whatever you like to call it. Yeah. If only we could teleport, then the hour drive would merely be seconds. It wouldn't matter anymore. That would be cool. When are they going to do that? What years are like Star Trek? When is that supposed to happen? Like 20? Is that like 2200 something?
Yeah, you're actually pretty close. I think. Yeah, I think it's like 22 something. So
yeah, I think I'm gonna miss out on that. I don't think I'm gonna. I'm also not gonna like freeze my body. I'm not gonna do the cryogenic thing. I don't think. I'm just gonna call it good. Whenever I'm dead, I'm gonna be cool with being dead.
Fair, yeah. I've already told Kirsten. I said I want one of those Viking funerals, right, where they push out to sea and lights on fire.
Shoot the arrows at it.
Yes,
but who's gonna fire the arrow?
That's true. She won't be.
Do you have a friend that's randomly incredibly talented with a bow?
I'll just start training my next child.
There you go.
Not my next child, but my first child, and
get
them
trying to
prepared
tell
for
us
that
something.
Responsibility.
Is there a mini Justin running around that we don't know about?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about. I mean, there's no possible way that's the case. There's no way. Okay. There's really not. There's no Justin out there. Okay. So today's show, the Metropolitan Division, Part 2. We've already hit the Islanders, Devils, Jackets, and Hurricanes. So if you haven't heard that yet, go back, listen to the show, subscribe, and you can also listen to the rest of our Pacific Division and Central Division. Everything broken up into 4-team increments, so as not to get too long per episode. And we are going to close out the Metro with the Rangers starting right now, and we're just going to do like we always do, a rundown of who they added, who they subtracted, and then we'll ask some big questions about where these particular teams are going to go, what we think about maybe their off season, and how we're kind of predicting out and projecting their regular season. So with that said, the Rangers added really like one big signing in Barclay Goodrow. They signed him to a redonkulous deal for a third line player. I guess what was it? $3.6 million. I think it was like a crazy number. It's like 3.641667 for 7 years. And no, I'm sorry, 6 years, for 6 years. And so a big long term for him. And then they also add Ryan Reeves via trade and Sammy Blaze via trade as well. They lose Pavel Buchnevich. They buy out Tony DeAngelo. Philip DiGiuseppe goes to the Canucks from the Rangers. Brendan Smith signs with the Hurricanes. And Brett Howden is a part of that trade to the Golden Knights for Ryan Reeves. Justin, my big question for the Rangers. They did a few things. Oh, I forgot to also mention they also hired a new coach. That, to me, is probably maybe the biggest move they made, bringing in Gerard Gallant. So, with all this said, what are your first thoughts on these New York Rangers and their offseason?
Well, I mean, obviously the big signing is Barclay Goodrow, right? They go out and they pluck one of the guys from the third line. If, in my opinion, honestly, probably the worst of the three guys that were on the third line there for Tampa, and they give him a big extension, or not extension, but a big contract, 6 years, $3.6 million. And that's, I don't mind the money per se per year, I guess, but the term they're giving him at 28 years old for a guy who is basically a glorified third liner. I mean, listen, at 20 points last season, his best season was 6 goals. Yeah, 6 goals. His best season was last year when he got traded to Tampa, and he managed to put in a total of 26 points and only 8 goals. So you're essentially paying $3.6 million for 8 goals and a guy who plays with a little bit of sandpaper to him. And yeah, I know if you go back last year, he played 62 games for San Jose,
8 for the Lightning, so there's 70. Another 55 regular season games, you're up to 125. And if you take the last 2 playoffs, that's a total of 43 games. Then you are at 148 games. No, 168 games. 168 games. And he has scored a total of 17 goals in 168 games. It's like a goal every 10 games. So he truly is like, his 6 goals last year, about on pace for what he would do in 82 games, like an 8-goal year. That is his MO.
Yeah, and again, that's the same kind of goal production, though. I mean, I will say that basically the Golden Knights got out of Ryan Reeves. Yep. I mean, and we know what Ryan Reeves is, right? He's essentially supposed to be a fourth-line checker, fighter. That's the type of guy he is, right? And so you don't pay $3.6 million for a third-line guy who is essentially going to give you 8 goals a year. And again, I know he brings a lot of other elements outside of the goal scoring, and but still, I mean, with the amount of money that this team is going to have to spend in RFAs and UFAs next year, that's a ton of money to hand out to a guy who essentially is never going to see, in my opinion, any minutes past third-line minutes.
Especially considering the fact that you had Pavel Buchnevich, who is a 20-goal scorer easy every year. I mean, last year, had it been a full season, he would have inched probably pretty close to 30. Definitely would have hit 25. And he's doing it consistently. He's only 26 years old, and he's got 4 years left on his deal at $5.8 million. I would take that any day over someone who can barely push 30 points and is never going to score you a goal. I mean, Buchnevich was putting up. He probably would have ended up in a full season with 70 points. I mean, that's a $7-8 million player in today's dollars, and they go the route of Barclay Goodrow and Ryan Reeves, and why? Because they deem themselves not tough enough. Yeah, is my only explanation.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, and it's very akin to the Washington Capitals blowing a 3-1 lead against the Montreal Canadiens in like 2009, was it? 2010. And saying, "Oh, we can't play defense. We need to do something about this." And they moved players. They brought in a new head coach. They changed everything, and they screwed up what they had, all in the name of playing better defense, because they ran into quite possibly the hottest goaltender in the last 20 years in the playoffs. That right. Yaroslav Halak.
Since Guy Hebert.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Or since Jean-Sébastien Aubin. Or Giguère.
Sorry.
Yeah, Giguère. Yeah, it's unconscionable to change a lot of your makeup just because of one moment or one series, in my mind. You know, unless it's happening. Now, it's different if it's happened, let's say 5 series in a row. Okay, and you're struggling and there's a clear reason why. The Rangers, to me, yeah, I can definitely justify bringing in Ryan Reeves. Sure, why not? But why are we swapping out Goodrow for Buchnevich? It doesn't make any sense to me. And sadly, I think that it's, plus they have 10 million, almost 9.3 million in cap space. So certainly they could have afforded him at least this year and kicked the can down the road when Zibanejad, Strome, are both UFAs, and they could have dealt with it then. Not to mention the fact that they also gave $5.6 million to a goalie who's played, 45 games total in the end. 47 games in the National Hockey League, and it's been over the last 2 years. I mean, he's been pretty good, but I mean, Shesterkin is $5.6 million. I mean, obviously they're banking on, hey, he's going to be really good, and we would have to pay him more if we only paid him, maybe $3 million for 2 years. They're thinking that it would be a worse situation later on, but I feel like this is a gross overpayment for a goalie who has not had much opportunity to prove himself over the long haul.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I essentially, like you said, it comes down to they're buying, basically value on the latter years of this contract. And I get it.
But how good is he going to be? Like, is he really going to be so good that he's going to be a $7 million a year goalie that you feel like you have to overpay him now?
No, I honestly think this guy's going to be, be a 9-teens type of save percentage goaltender, which is fine and good. He'll be, might be top 10 goaltender. I don't think he'll be up there in that top 5, but he might be a top 10 goaltender, if he develops here over the next couple of years a little bit more. But still, with that said, he's not going to command $10 million. I don't think teams now are going to be paying goaltenders what Bobrovsky got just because they look and they can see what happened there. And so, again, I think, the contract's going to be up at 29. I think they're looking at it as when he's 29, we'll still get one more crack at signing him to a long-term deal and make it, worth something instead of being hampered at 30, say 33 years old, where maybe they be like, okay, well, we can't give this guy, 7 years anymore. So, maybe they're looking at it from that kind of perspective. And especially, like I said, they've got so many RFAs and UFAs to sign this offseason. So maybe they're trying to buy value now by giving him a couple more years.
Yeah.
And you know what? The question for me now, when you're sticking with goaltending, Shesterkin's been good. Georgiev's been good as a backup. But you know what? If you look at his numbers, they're pretty comparable to what Shesterkin had as far as, you look at his numbers last year, 910, he was pretty dang good. This year, 19 games, 905. Now, he wasn't as good as Shesterkin, but, I mean, it's been pretty close, and he's been pretty consistent as far as, save percentage goals against are concerned. And you know what you're getting out of him now at this point, and I think he's going to probably want to raise from the $2.4 million he gets. So, maybe they're also looking at it like that, like we got a 1A, 1B situation about to happen here, so we don't want to pay, Carey Price $10 million and, Jake Allen another $4 million. So, maybe they're looking at it like that. Who knows? But, you know what, regardless, I think, maybe this year if he, continues down that path of development and keeps playing as well as he has been over the last couple of years in the short sample size we've seen him, this contract will be more than worth it, in my opinion.
Hey, if he wins the Vezina Trophy, then,
well, of course,
I'll take everything back. You mentioned the RFAs that need to be signed next offseason. Just to run through them, not to mention the UFAs in Zibanejad and Strome, specifically Zibanejad. Sammy Blais, Kravtsov, Capocacco, and Julian Gauthier up front, and then, of course, Adam Fox on the back end, and then you said Georgiev is also an RFA in the goaltending position. So, I mean, you're looking at a lot of key players who, I mean, they're going to have $17 million to play with as of right now. So $17 million, with Adam Fox, I don't think you're getting away with less than $9 million. So go ahead and slate in Adam Fox for, very similar money to Cale Makar. I don't think you're getting a Quinn Hughes kind of discount. Obviously our Vancouver Canucks preview did not include the signings of Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, but both players, 7.85 for 6 years for Hughes and 7.35 for 3 years for Pettersson. They got a sweetheart deal on both these players, especially Hughes. I don't think that Adam Fox is going to go, yeah, just give me 7. He won the Norris. Like, he was by that standard, he was better than Cale Makar.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's the reasoning, right? He's got the Norris Trophy where guys like Seth Jones, Zach Werenski, Cale Makar, they have not got that Norris Trophy. Yeah, they've been considered and been up there as far as voting's concerned, but they don't have the hardware he does. He's shown he can be consistent as far as production is, and I think if Adam Fox's camp is smart, they're going to wait till, well, I shouldn't say Adam Fox's camp, but the New York Rangers, they'll want to wait it out this year because maybe they're hoping, I don't know, maybe if they're hoping, but they're hoping that, he doesn't pull in another Norris Trophy type year, because then they're definitely going to have to shell out $9 million. I
don't think you have any problem. I mean, if a guy wins another Norris Trophy, you'll happily shell out $9 million. It's not the
right.
It's not the guys making a ton of money at the top that you mind giving money to. It's the guys like Barclay Goodrow you mind giving 3.6 to. But apparently Chris Drury had no problem doing that. And it is interesting now that the dust has settled after the Jeff Gorton firing and all that I don't think Jeff Gorton would have brought in Barclay Goodrow at that number.
No,
I don't think that he would have made the moves that Chris Drury made. So, Chris Drury has very quickly put his stamp on this team, and signing Adam Fox, Capo Caco. I mean, really, Adam Fox, he's going to get paid, even if he has like a slightly down year from what he had last year. He's still going to make over $7-8 million. It's really the Capo Caco. Like, can he step up into what people expect of him? You get it. This is the really the first real legitimate off season that he's getting. That he had his rookie year. All right, you don't totally know what to expect coming in your rookie year, and he had an okay rookie year. I mean, it wasn't good. It wasn't like pitiful. He scored 10 goals in 66 games, but from that point on, everything was so weird. With COVID, you're almost you are expecting some of these players' developments to be maybe a little stunted. So he has an okay year again in his sophomore year. You are really expecting him to come out and be a difference maker for the Rangers. He seemed to be better towards the end of last year, and you're wondering, can he be the guy who was taken second overall? You're expecting probably 20 goals and 20 assists out of Capo Caco. Minimum.
Yeah, and I mean, he's going to be playing second-line minutes, likely with Ryan Strome and maybe Artemi Panarin. So he's going to get every opportunity to increase his production. But again, I think you're hoping that he takes another step. And you know what I think? Luckily for the Rangers, his last two seasons haven't been blowout seasons as far as, 50, 60 points. So now they've got a little ammunition to come back and say, cool, we can give you $3 million. We can give you Goudreau money and, get you signed for 2-3 years, a little short-term deal. And hopefully he develops, and then they really have to shell out. But, then they got to think about next year too, because then they've got the number 1 overall picks, Alex Lafreniere, who's going to be, an RFA. He's going to need an extension after that offseason. So,
and if he has a good year this year, it's going to be lights out. Like, the Rangers are going to. I mean, it's a problem everyone would love to have, right? Like,
right.
Everyone would love to have. Oh man, you have so many good young players coming that you just can't even. You're not even sure how you're going to keep all of them. Like, what a shame. Well, right, exactly. I'll tell you what. You're going to probably have to go. Somebody's going to have to go. And the sad thing is. You signed Chris Kreider to a stupid deal. That's a terrible deal. Like, in the end, right now, it is what it is. $6.5 million for Kreider, who put up 30 points in 50 games, 20 goals. So he's a 30-goal scorer. Like, he's right around, I think, where he should be with his cap hit this year. Like, $6.5 million for a guy who's putting up 55 points and 30 goals. I mean, that's reasonable. What's going to happen in like 2 years when you go, well, we can't really afford to keep Chris Kreider around anymore, and he still has 4 years left on his deal, and no one will take him from us. And we can't re-sign Mika Zibanejad. And guess what? Your best players are wingers, so you're going to need to figure that out real quick. Like, there's a lot of issues to me with the Rangers and the way that they're constructed. Because their best players are wingers, they're one centerman. I don't know if they're going to be able to afford to keep them.
And that's the question, right? Mika Zibanejad apparently wants close to $10 million
that he
for
should.
His next contract.
I mean, the last 3 years, he's put up more than a point per game. If you take the last 3 years combined, he's put up more than a point per game. And, I mean, he's coming off of 30, then 41 goals, and then 24 in a shortened season. I mean, this guy, he's a perennial 30-goal scorer, at least. He's going to get paid somewhere, whether it's from New York or some other team. You know that somebody's going to be knocking on the door. Is there any way... I don't think there's any way that he gets dealt beforehand. Like, I don't see that happening. This is going to be a team that is making a big push for the playoffs. Like, I'm not going to say whether I think they're going to make the playoffs, but if they miss the playoffs, this is a huge failure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. when you look at the top end talent they have, they're very balanced from, top to bottom as far as all four lines are concerned. And then when you look at the back end, you've got the Norris Trophy winner, you've got Jacob Trouba, Ryan Lindgren, and then you've got Keandre Miller, who's developing very, very nicely, and you've got a good goaltending tandem. There's all the right pieces in place to be a successful team. Now the question is, outside of Panarin, they don't really have that game changer up front, and obviously you'd like to have one or two more.
Well, you're sure thinking that Lafreniere is going to be your game changer along with Kakko. Like that's where
you hope so.
That's where your first overall pick better be something.
Right.
You better have something to show for in season 2. Season 1, we can write off. See, I think for Lafreniere in particular, I think we can all write off last year easily. Like no one has a problem writing off last year because it was a weird ass year. Like we can go ahead and write that off, but it better be good this year. Like he better put up, minimum probably 50 points. Like below 50 points would probably be considered a pretty is this going to turn out? Like, is he going to be as good as we thought he should be? I'm expecting him to put up close to 70, like somewhere between 70 and 80 points. I think that he will be a point per game player. He's going to get opportunities to play. I think with Panarin, he's going to get more power play time. I think that he's going to put up some big number. Like we know this kid can score. He's going to prove why he was the first overall pick. Like I don't think that he's just going to bust out of the first overall pick. Like it's not going to happen. He was so good in juniors. And then you have a weird COVID year. You don't actually get to spend any time with your team. You don't get to practice. Like, of course, this kid didn't have the best year. It makes sense. But this year, I expect him minimum like 60 points out of Lafreniere. It would be my bet, but I think he'll be close to a point per game here.
Okay, wow.
Especially if you get some time with Panarin.
Yeah, well, right now the Rangers got him slated on that top line with Zibanejad and Kreider. I think I think from what I heard, they actually switched because Lafreniere is more comfortable on the left side, so they actually moved Kreider to the right side, which is not his normal spot. But I honestly could peg him between 50 and 60 points. I'm not going to go point per game yet, but again, he's going to see power play time, top line minutes with Panarin on that power play. He's going to get 18, 17 minutes a game, I think, as far as time on ice per night. And so, again, he'll have every opportunity, and he's got good players around him, right? He's not like your typical first overall picks where they come in and they've got really nobody, maybe one other person on the team that can really dish the puck. So he's got every opportunity to succeed right now.
And I think you'll see him play a little with Panarin. I just have a feeling. I guess you're kind of putting Kakko with Panarin there to see if he can get him going, but
yeah, now that might not work out, and they might switch him. They might move him around. You never know.
That's right. Okay, I think we're good on the Rangers for now. We'll come back with our playoff predictions at the very end for the Metro, but let's move on unless you have anything final to say about the Rangers.
I guess the question, just yes or no, do the Rangers lose both Strome and Zibanejad in the offseason?
I think they're going to do everything they can to keep Zibanejad. That would be my... They have to.
Fair.
And maybe that means one of their younger guys is in a trade.
All right.
See. The Rangers are never without drama. They're never without a really big name is going to get traded there. Now, I guess.
Well, you keep hearing Jack Eichel's name thrown around. So
yeah,
we'll see.
he's not going to be anything for a year. I don't think he's going to play at all this year.
No, and there maybe could be one of your younger guys, right, getting dealt next offseason. So
very true. Okay, let's go Philadelphia Flyers. A big change for them. It seems like everybody left, and then a whole new slew of guys come in. They add Ryan Ellis in a trade with the Predators, and Rasmus Ristolainen trade with the Sabres. Cam Atkinson from the Blue Jackets, and they signed Martin Jones, Keith Yandel, Nate Thompson, Derek Brassard, and Adam Clendenning. They lose Jakub Voracek to the Blue Jackets in that trade for Cam Atkinson. Nolan Patrick, who eventually ends up at the Golden Knights in that trade with Nashville. Shane Gostisbehere goes to the Coyotes. Philippe Myers to the Predators. Robert Hagg to the Sabres. Brian Elliott leaves for the Lightning. And Carson Twarynski was the Kraken's expansion draft pick. The least consequential player that they lost. Okay, biggest question for the Flyers. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's Carter Hart. Which Carter Hart
I'm with you.
are we going to get? Which Carter Hart do we get this year?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you because, listen, if you look beyond Carter Hart, you've got Martin Jones as your backup, right? And if I'm any sort of Philadelphia Flyers fan, I am scared out of my mind to see him play more than 15, 20 games this year. So, and then you look in the minor leagues, what they've got in the system, the pipeline, there's not much. There's really nothing to be like, okay, cool, we can deal with 1 or 2 years of Martin Jones. Then we've got a guy coming that could back up Carter Hart. Not happening.
You know what's really funny? Do you know how unbelievably consistent Martin Jones is? For the last 3 years, over the course of 137 games, he has an 896 save percentage every single year the last 3 years. 62 games, 41 games, and 34 games. 896 save percentage. You freaking know what you're going to get from this guy. And in 20 playoff games, he elevated his game to an 898 save percentage. Like,
oh boy,
this guy is the model of consistency of being pretty bad, but he was considerably better than Carter Hart, who had an 877 save percentage. And we know all about his failures last year. I think that it was just a really weird year for him. And I think, once again, especially for some of these younger guys, we're just going to go ahead and forgive last year. Do you think, though, like, are we going to see the 914 Carter Hart? Like that mid 9-1s, or are we going to see somebody kind of hovering around 900, kind of floating through, almost that like, well, the Flyers are winning games because they actually overall, if you discount the goaltending, they had a playoff team. In every other way, they had a playoff team. They couldn't keep the puck out of their net. Now, they address some of that by their acquisitions of Ryan Ellis and Ristolainen and Keith Yandel. Like, they basically overhaul their entire defense. And certainly you hope that will answer that question, but it's going to really come down to what? What's the difference for the Flyers this year?
Yeah, I honestly think the difference is going to be Ryan Ellis, in my opinion. I think this guy is a stud on the blue line. I think he's going to put up top 2 minutes for this team, probably playing most of his nights alongside Ian Provorov, and I think he's going to be I don't want to say a game changer, but he's going to be a calming veteran presence, right? He's a guy who's reliable. You know what you're going to get out of him. He's going to put you up, 30, 35 points a season, but he's not going to make a huge amount of mistakes. He's not going to be up and down as far as his gameplay every night, whereas Shane Gostisbehere, right? He got let go this season, moved on to greener pastures. But you know what? You didn't know what you were getting out of him every single night. You were getting crap some nights. You were getting, a good defenseman some nights. And then when you look beyond that, the rest of this blue line to me is enough to help Carter Hart, right? Maybe not necessarily get back to maybe that 914, 917 save percentage he had a couple years ago, but I think he'll be somewhere in the middle, maybe 910, 909, enough to maybe put them right there in that bubble spot where they can compete.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, see, the one issue I have with that is just that Carter Hart is not supposed to just be an average goaltender.
Correct.
He was lauded to be the next big goaltender in the NHL, and so thinking that, or I guess hoping that he can just maintain that 909, somewhere in the 900s for a save percentage. I mean, this is a little bit of a fall from grace because I think coming into last year, everyone thought, hey, this guy could be a legitimate, like, he's pushing himself towards being in the conversation for being one of the best goalies in the NHL. And now he's definitely is he in the top 20 goalies in the NHL? And that probably, if he is, he's definitely towards the bottom of that list. He's fallen for sure from grace. Now we'll see if these moves on the defensive side kind of show, maybe he was exposed a little too much last year. Let's talk up front with the Flyers. Claude Giroux, their captain, been there forever. He's in the last year of his deal. What do you think that they're going to do with him? Like, does he fit into this team anymore? Is he going to be are we going to be having conversations about Claude Giroux on his way out of Philadelphia, or is this, hey, his contract's up, but we'll likely see them take care of it?
Yeah, you know what? I think, honestly, as long as the production is still there, he provides great leadership. He provides great depth as far as you can move him around from wing to centerman. He still fits in anywhere on your lineup. He still plays top 6 minutes for you. And he's obviously not going to, get the same kind of numbers as far as contract is concerned, either term or AAV. And so I think as long as he's willing to take a little bit of a discount, maybe $6 million, 2-3 years at the most, I still think he's willing, and the team's willing to keep him around just because of all the intangibles he brings from leadership standpoint. And then you look beyond Sean Couturier too, and really, you know what? I worry about their center depth because, they brought in Nolan Patrick. They drafted him originally to help kind of fill in that second line spot. It didn't really pan out. He's off to Vegas now. Kevin Hayes, he's a centerman. Sometimes he looks like he's got it. Sometimes I do worry about his longevity as far as the way he plays the game. So having that extra veteran centerman there is going to be so key for this team, especially while they wait for a guy like, say, Morgan Frost to develop, right? If he's going to be, a next top 6 centerman for them. So, we'll see how that pans out. But, for me, I love Claude Giroux. I love what he brings to the game. He's still chippy. He still can dish the puck just as good as anybody in the game. And so, again, if he's, willing to take a little pay cut, I see no reason why the Flyers don't keep him around.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree. I think that he'll be pretty amenable to sticking around. I guess you're going to look to Morgan Frost, like you said. He's probably on a number of the people's pontifications on the Flyers. They pinned him as, probably the player who has a good breakout year for the Flyers, Morgan Frost. That is entirely possible. He only played in 2 games last year. And so it's his development maybe a little stunted. Again, COVID not helping anyone's development. I wonder, side note, I wonder if COVID ends up being a really good thing for some veterans because some younger players take longer to develop. And so some veterans are going to get more jobs because of that.
Yeah, and then they're not playing a full, 80 games. So, yeah, of course. So maybe their legs are a little bit, more fresh too.
Yeah,
so
yeah, that too. That's a good point. Okay. I think that, defensively, we didn't really hit on being able to sign Keith Yandle at $900,000. Keith Yandle's going to be a beautiful addition to whether it's their first power play or if he's on their second power play unit. Man, that's a good back end second power play unit guy. Like he's somebody who legitimately can put up 50 points still, I think. Based on what we saw last year, 27 points in 56 games, and that was in a little more limited role. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that he could put up 40 points for this Flyers team.
No, I don't disagree. There's really nothing. There's enough talent up front, and there's enough talent, around him on the back end to help him, have that kind of production.
Yeah, I think ultimately this team is really like they need to show what they have. Like James Van Riemsdyk, he needs to be really good. Claude Giroux, he needs to be really good. Like they have some veteran players. There are certainly younger guys like a Joel Farabee who just got a big contract extension, and on their back end they're not young guys anymore. Like Ivan Provorov has been in the league now for 5 years? Is this his 5th year in the league? This will be his 6th year in the NHL. So I mean, we are past the point where we say, yeah, Ivan Provorov, he's a young guy. No, he's not a young guy. He just happens to be the youngest guy on their defense. But everyone is, played multiple years in the NHL. I mean, this is an experienced blue line, maybe one of the more experienced blue lines in the National Hockey League. And, there's no excuses anymore for the Flyers. Like, this is go time for them. And,
and listen, you've got Ristolainen, too, who's finally coming off those crappy Buffalo teams, and he's put on a team that actually has a chance to be in the playoffs, right? And he's in a contract year, so this could be a breakout year for him too.
Yeah, I mean, he, for a really pitiful Buffalo team, still managed to put up 18 points in the 49 games. So, maybe he's back putting up 40 points, that's where he was when the Sabres were even just like halfway decent. They weren't good, but they weren't the worst. He was still putting up 40 points. So I think you could see him return to that. They've got some nice depth on their defense. They don't, Provorov aside, they have a lot of like 3-4 guys, like number 3, number 4 defensemen, but that's a great way to fill out your full top 6 defensemen. I mean, they are definitely in a good position where, if one guy goes down, this whole defense isn't going to fall apart, which was some of the other issues. Okay, let's move on to the other side of Pennsylvania, to the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Penguins didn't do a whole lot in this offseason. They added Brock McGinn, Danton Heinen, and Dominic Simon. They lose Jared McCann to a trade with the Toronto Maple Leafs, who eventually gets taken by Seattle in the expansion draft. Brandon Tanev goes to the Kraken. He was their selection on Pittsburgh. And then Cody Ceci leaves for Edmonton after a 1-year stint in Pittsburgh, where he basically revived his career. Colton Sevier, Mark Jankowski, and Frederick Gaudreau all out of Pittsburgh. My biggest concern with this team, though, is they did absolutely nothing to address their goaltending. Their goaltending was not very good. There's so many question marks about it. Will that ultimately be their demise?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking so. I mean, honestly, I wish they would have, again, they had an opportunity to go pluck a goaltender for a backup role here. I mean, listen, Casey DeSmith at $1.25 million, if you have to bury him in the minors or carry 3 goaltenders, fine, not a big deal. But, again, it would have been great if they could have addressed that, because, again, Tristan Jarry, I just don't feel confident about him coming in. Casey DeSmith, if he's got to play 20 games again, fine. You know what? You're going to get okay numbers out of him, and that's that. But if he's got to play anything more than that, if he's got to play 30, 40 games, I would be very, very worried if I'm a Penguins fan.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, goaltending-wise, Tristan Jarry he didn't really impress in the playoffs, and there was just so much of a critique on how he handled himself in the playoffs that I just didn't know how you could come back, and I'm fine with coming back with Tristan Jarry, but to come back with the same 2 goaltenders, that's what concerns me. I think that Tristan Jarry probably has the opportunity to, he's in that 9-10 save percentage kind of goaltender. I think that he can be good enough, but he also has never started more than 39 games, which is what he did last year. So in a full-on season, you're right. Do you want to see Casey DeSmith start even 25 games? And in which case you're getting Jarry for 63 games? That's probably too much for Jarry. I wonder, there's not a whole lot out there in terms of free agent goaltenders that you would look at and say, yeah, that guy's a lot better than Casey DeSmith. Other than Tuukka Rask, but I don't think Tuukka Rask goes anywhere except for Boston unless he just retires. So I don't know what else is out there. I couldn't see Tuukka Rask just signing in Pittsburgh. Could you? That would be kind of fun, though.
No, I don't think that would happen. I think if there's any move to be made, it's done via trade. But the other thing they could have maybe done to address that a little bit more, the issues with goaltending, is maybe brought in some other defenders, right? Shake up the defense like Philly did a little bit, right? To shore up that back end and give your goaltender a little bit more confidence to say, hey, you know what, we still trust you, we still believe in you, but we think that, bringing in a couple other guys right in front of you is going to definitely help. Now, they didn't go out and do that. They didn't bring any defenders. And now, not only that, now they've got to deal without their top 2 centermen for, I think, at least another 6 weeks. I think Crosby's gone potentially, and Malkin's 2 months. Mm-hmm. So, you know what? You can't control the play. They're obviously going to be playing without the puck now a little bit more than probably with, in my opinion. So now you've got to worry about that a little bit more if you're in goal.
Yeah, so, okay, how good does Jeff Carter have to be here to start the year? Because I think he's their number one center.
Yeah, I mean, to start the season, yes, he's their number one center, and then they've got, Evan Rodriguez and Teddy Bluger behind him, so you're not too confident.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's nothing to really look at and be like, all right, cool. They basically got to float 500, in my opinion, while these two guys are out, and so, hopefully they get one of them back. Like I said, maybe, 4 to 6 weeks, Crosby comes back, and you know what? Then they can start riding the ship a little bit more, because if Jeff Carter's your number 2 center, I'm okay with that, right? You can get by with him as your number 2, but number 1, I'm worried, because don't get me wrong, if he's got to play with Brian Rust, Jake Gensel, who knows where they're going to pair him up, but I'm still worried regardless.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, I want to see like Pittsburgh go out and they can put Sidney Crosby and Malkin on long-term injury. Like they could easily do that. My guess is once the season starts, they will do that. That would open up a lot of cap space for them. And there's one guy I know that he's older, not as nearly as effective as he once was, but you could bring in Eric Stahl, a 1 year, $1 million, and at least utilize him to start the year here. Where he could be somewhat of a grounding, have a grounding effect on this team, where you're not relying on him to play more than 15, 16 minutes a night, but I think he's probably better than putting out a Teddy Bluger.
No, I don't actually disagree with you. And if you surround him with some decent wingers like a Brian Rust and again, Jake Gensel, you could probably get 30, 40 points out of this guy maybe this year. Now, again, once Crosby and Malkin come back, he falls down in your depth chart, and maybe he's, playing third and fourth line minutes at that point, which is fine. But, hey, you could probably get a few decent goals out of him. I still think he's got to have a little something left in the tank. And, I mean, he looked okay in Montreal in the playoffs last year. Didn't look great, but he looked good enough that he can still go out there and skate.
Yeah, you just think there's got to be someone out there who could scoop up. But I think they're just going to kind of see how it goes here to start the year. That's maybe how I know they do have Brian Boyle on a PTO. So at very least, you've got Brian Boyle who will take all your face-offs and then skate off the ice as fast as he can. He didn't play at all last year in the NHL. He played in the World Championship. And that was it for Brian Boyle. So obviously he's trying to get back and playing at a high level. And so maybe he ends up signing with the Penguins for league min. But, and that would at least help the center ice face-off problem that is likely to be there to start the year without Malkin and Crosby. Okay, so here's a bigger picture. Like, we know Crosby and Malkin, they're going to both come back. Malkin maybe is a little bit more of a question mark because he seems to have had nagging injuries the last several years. But Malkin, Letang, Rust, and Carter, they're all UFAs at the end of the year. Is there any chance they aren't on the Penguins when the season ends?
Oh boy!
These are all guys. Carter aside, Malkin, Letang, Rust. Like, these are guys. They were all there for the 2 recent Stanley Cup victories. Malkin and Letang, obviously they won one in 2008 as well, and 2009, 9.
Yeah, 8 was Detroit.
yes. So, is there any chance that any of them goes at the deadline if Pittsburgh is out of it?
If they're way out of it, like towards the bottom, there's so many games out, there's absolutely no chance. Then yes, I could see a Brian Rust going, potentially a Jeff Carter going, but outside of that, I really don't see a Chris Letang or Evgeny Malkin moving. I just don't think at this point in their careers, it's just...
You don't think that this would be I feel like Evgeny Malkin there's always been rumors about Malkin being dealt. You don't think that maybe this is the time where, that it actually comes true and the Penguins eat half of his contract. They trade him to Phoenix, Arizona, where they eat half the rest, and then he ends up getting traded to like the Vegas Golden Knights?
Yeah, no, that would be funny though to actually watch that. That wouldn't shock me either. But
if it happens, I'm going to be scurrying back to this episode in like 8 months or so, or 6 months or whatever, and I'm going to be putting it on blast. I'm going to start a TikTok account just to play that.
I really hope so. No, but listen, in the past, the reason Malkin has always been on the block is because his contract is so large, and they've always been tight up against the cap, trying to find ways to wiggle in other guys to create depth for this team, on the wing anyways. And so that's not the case this time, right? I think the case this time is more or less just the fact that, hey, his deal's up after this year, and whether he resigns is going to be a big question mark. I mean, I'm just going to come out and say it now. I don't think Malkin resigns. I think he goes to Russia and calls it a career for, America, and that's that. He pulls a Pavel Datsyuk per se, but yeah, I mean, I think what they're always going to feel they're in it as long as they have Crosby and Malkin there, and regardless of how far out they are, I think they're always going to feel like they're in it. And they've got the talent up front to do it. It's just again, can the goaltending keep them close, keep them in it? So.
Yeah, and that's like their weakest part. So that's a big question. Penguins are maybe the most difficult team to pin this year because again, you're right, they have Crosby and Malkin, but they're not going to be there for the first little bit, and they have bad goaltending, but they have like Letang's in a contract year, so you never know what that could do, and so is Malkin. And if Malkin decides that he does want to play, like hey, there's some teams with some Russians on it that maybe he'd want to sneak over to, or maybe he just wants to keep playing for the Penguins. But have you actually heard? Has anybody said that he's going to go to Russia, or is that just purely?
I've heard it, but there's no sources that confirm that he's been talking about that, and there's speculation. That's about it. Okay. And really, I mean, it's one of those things where there's smoke, there might be fire. I don't know.
Sure. We'll I mean, he's one, like, it's not like some other guys where they're like, well, I've never won the cup before, so like maybe you could see them going and jumping around, or I don't know. If Malkin's healthy though, I think that he'll probably stay in the league. He'll sign his 1 year deals here and there, maybe 1 year, $8 million or something like that, and go sign something. I mean, he's still a point per game player, no matter how you cut it. He's still very effective, so I think he'd still get paid if he wanted to go somewhere else. But that will obviously remain to be seen. But I think there's a good chance that somebody who will become a UFA next year won't be on the Penguins when the regular season ends. I think there is a strong chance of that, and we will see. Okay, let's go. Washington Capitals, the last team in the Metro. They added really nobody except for like Vitek Vanacek, who left for like a week and came back. Like he was taken in the expansion draft, and then they traded Brendan Dillon for 2 second-round picks, and then they traded one of those second-round picks back for Vitek Vanacek. And then they also lose Craig Anderson, who goes and is officially a part of probably the worst goaltending duo any NHL team has posted up in a very long time up there in Buffalo. They are going hard after Shane Wright. And then there's Michael Raffle. They also lost. So the Capitals really not doing a whole lot in terms of significant adds or subtractions, really. They're, for the most part, coming in with who they had last year. And yeah, that's I guess the reason why my number one question is, how many goals will Ovechkin score?
Well, they got smart and they locked him up long enough to where he might actually be able to pass Gretzky's record. And who knows, he might play into his mid-40s just so he can do it, right?
Sure.
That guy is talented enough. He just needs to just literally sit at the top of the circle and let it rip. He doesn't need to skate anywhere at all, just in and out of the neutral zone, and that's about it. And just let him do his thing on the power play, and boom, he'll put up 20 goals a year, no problem.
Yeah, he needs 165 goals to break the record all time. Okay. So 165 goals, and if he plays all those 5 years and he scored 40 goals a year, he would be 5 goals short. So
okay,
yeah, he needs 41 goals a year. He's now, it's a bummer for him because it really, like, you look at some of his really great years. I mean, There's the lockout year where he only played in 48 games. I don't really think that the lockout in 2004 really hurt him all that much. Like, that would have been his rookie year. Yeah, he might have come in and scored another 40 goals, but who knows what would, that was a different era of hockey even then. So maybe the lockout actually helped him to score more goals coming out of it in his rookie year because of that. So we'll call that one a wash. But the last 2 years, I mean, you're only able to play 3/4 of a season and then kind of basically half a season last year. So we'll see. It's going to be tight. Now, if he plays like another 7 years, I think it's like money in the bank. He's going to definitely,
and that's the thing.
He'll definitely be able to score 25 goals a year over that period. Okay, well, that was I think this year, let's just let's go over under 50 goals. Does he get to 50?
Oh, no. I think 40 goals is reasonable. I think he's capable of doing that. Again, this is still a pretty talented group of guys up front. They're aging a little bit. I mean, and unfortunately they had to sign Ovechkin, right, to a big money deal. I mean, he's definitely worth $9.5 million just by the amount of people he puts in the seats alone, and he could still score goals. Nicholas Backstrom, in my opinion, he's getting overpaid now, but I think it's just a matter of, he probably was owed that because he was underpaid in his last contract. So, at $6.7 million, he definitely wasn't getting paid what he was worth to this team. So,
yeah, I mean, he's still a point per game guy.
Right.
Nobody's complaining about a point per game guy making $9 million. Like that's about, he's probably about where he should be, except for you wonder what year is it that it suddenly becomes way too much. Like, when does he put up 45 points in 82 games and you go, ooh, now that contract looks really bad.
Right. But I mean, up front, right? So the question mark for me is all about the Birdman, Evgeny Kuznetsov, right?
Yep.
He's your second line center. What kind of player are you going to get this year? Are you going to get the guy that doesn't want to be there, that's ready to get traded and, gives you 40, 50 points? Or are you going to get the guy from a few years ago that was, essentially close to a point per game, if not a point per game player? And so, that's really the X factor for this team, because, if they want to be successful, it's all driven by their offense, in my opinion. They don't have a very, outside of John Carlson, I really look at this defense and it's just a bunch of fourth, fifth defensemen. And then the goaltending to me too is still questionable. I'm not sold on this goaltending. I know a lot of people were still in on Vanacek, and they thought he was a pretty good goaltender. Samsonov was supposed to be the goalie of the future for this team, but I'm not sold on either one of these guys being anything more than a 1B or backup goaltender. So, what are we going to get here? And so if they can improve, if they can play a little bit better in the defense, obviously outside of Carlson, if these guys can play at their peak, then this team's going to be successful. But in my opinion, it's all driven on what goes up front. How many goals can this team score every night?
Yeah, I mean, defensively, they're okay. I mean, they can hold their own a little bit. They have got to be one of the oldest defensive corps. I mean, it's like every single person on their defense corps is over the age of 30. That's actually hilarious. Right. I mean, it's Carlson 31, so is Schultz and Jensen and Kempny. Then you have Trevor Van Riemsdyk and Orlov are 30, and then Matt Irwin 33. I mean, that is an old ass defense. That is aging very, very quickly. Not to mention, who they have up front. I mean, their youngest player is Anthony Mantha, who's 27 years old. Oh, Daniel Sprong is 24. He's their only player under the age of 20. Brian Pinho. I don't really know.
He doesn't count.
I don't think we can. I mean, he played in 2 games last year. So Brian Pinho, you don't count. Their youngest player, Daniel Sprong, 24. And then the next guy, two 27-year-olds, Tom Wilson and Anthony Mantha. Everyone else is 29 plus. So that's definitely an aging team. But I think you're right. It all hinges on Kuznetsov, everything. Because if he could show up and he can be the guy who's putting up 55, 60 points again, then we're in business. Like, then we're talking first place Capitals in the Metro. If he's going to go and put up 40 points, or 45 points, it's not going to be a very good sign for Kuznetsov or the Capitals. I think the Capitals are going to need a lot of help because their top six is what's going to drive this. I don't like their bottom six very much at all. So I really, they're so top heavy that it's going to be very, very important that everyone up there produces big time. And I think that Anthony Mantha has potential to go 35 goals. I think that we could see a huge year out of Anthony Mantha. But I that's probably the player who needs to like come out and surprise you the most. So far, kind of struggled in Washington. He's got 4 goals in the 19 games that he's played with them, including the playoffs. And that's not going to cut it over time. So we'll see if Mantha. We'll see how that trade turns out. That Vrana-Mantha. Now, Vrana is not going to play for the Red Wings for the first 4 months. So that sucks. But we'll see if Mantha can outplay Vrana even in a shortened season for Vrana.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I like, like you said, their top six are good and they're very top heavy. But outside of that, really all they have is Lars Eller. And so, yeah, I do worry about it when you start looking at depth for this team. And, Connor Sherry, Carl Hagelin, these guys aren't the same players they used to be. And so, you know what? I mean, it's going to be do or die for this top six. And hopefully, like you said, Kuznetsov shows up and he's that 60-point guy again.
Yeah. I think this is the team now where we're going, and Pittsburgh's in the same boat. They remind me of the Red Wings. The Red Wings won the Cup in 2008. They go to the final in 2009. And 2010, they were really good. And then it kind of starting in like 2011, it was like, how long can this team be really good? And then how long can every year be like, wow, they're still pretty good. Yeah, I just feel like, when's the bubble going to burst? And then, of course, finally it did. And it was because Zetterberg and Datsuk basically aged out. And I do think that Ovechkin's a different player. I guess Datsuk didn't really age out. He just didn't want to be here anymore. And I think Ovechkin's different than that. Obviously a far more outspoken and like in the public's eye kind of guy than Datsuk ever was. But this team at some point will have a year where you go, ugh. Like the San Jose Sharks. I mean, we thought that they would have the best defense in the league and they would have 3 defensemen putting up over 50 points. And right now you're going, ugh. Look at that really overpaid team. And eventually that is going to be the case probably for the Capitals, especially the Capitals, because they have so many of those players like Oshie, Mantha, like locked up. They're locked up for a good, and Backstrom for another 4 years. Like, that's a long time to be locked up. Whereas at least Pittsburgh's in a situation where, hey, if Malkin, if he just like can't stay healthy, hey, there's $9.5 million. Jake Getzel's only 26. He's only signed for another 3 years. Crosby, you don't care. You'll pay Crosby as however much he needs, but they're in a much different position because they don't have a lot of old players signed for a long time. They didn't spend the money on the TJ Oshie. And that's probably the biggest difference, is that they don't have that anchor contract like Washington does. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Maybe not this year. Might not be a huge impact this year, but down the road. Okay, well, it's that time, Justin. It's that time to make your playoff prediction.
Oh, all right.
Let's start her up from the bottom. Who will finish last place in the Metropolitan Division?
Okay. I'm going to say the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Okay, Columbus Blue Jackets. Yep. There's no reason to think that the Columbus Blue Jackets will be very good.
Yeah, I like Elvis Merlikins, but outside of that, I think they've just got too many issues. No center depth. They've got a new head coach. It's going to take some getting used to, and so you know what? I think it's gonna be bad for them. Yeah,
for me, I'm going to go Columbus and New Jersey. I'll say Columbus finishes last, but I think both those teams are going to be the bottom feeders once again in this division.
Yeah, I got New Jersey next at number 7 for sure.
Okay, and your number 6. And okay, hold on. Before we do this, how many teams make the playoffs in this division?
Oh, that's good. I'm I'm going to go 4-4 with this Atlantic Metro
okay.
here.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So, yeah, because, I mean, the Atlantic, it's pretty, in my mind, it's pretty easy to pick 4 teams that will probably make the playoffs. It's a matter of that 5th team that I think really has a chance to make it. Like, I think the Atlantic division is head and shoulders better than any other division out there. And that, like, the Buffalo Sabres aside, of course, but I mean, the Sabres are going to finish so low in the standings because they have to play the Atlantic division. You know, what you play every team in there, 6 times?
Yeah, 7 or 8 times for sure.
Yeah, so, I mean, you're talking like 50 games you're playing against, or 40 to 50 games that you're playing against this Atlantic division. And really the only team that you can go, they're not that going to be that good, the Red Wings. But even the Red Wings are going to probably be better than they were last year.
Right, like Detroit and Ottawa, they're going to fight you every single night.
Yep,
they're not going to give you easy wins.
Yep, not to mention, yeah. Anyways, okay, so in my mind, there is probably a good chance that 5 teams go from the Atlantic. A good chance, but that doesn't mean there will. I think that it's fair to say, yeah, I mean, either 3 or 4 from the Metro. Definitely not 5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely not 5.
So who are you going at 6? Who's gonna be on the outside of the playoff?
Okay. Yeah, this was tough. I really had to think about this one, but honestly, I'm going Pittsburgh Penguins.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thinking that they're just not going to be able to make up for the loss of Crosby and Malkin early on.
Yeah, I think they're going to drown really, really fast to start the season, and they're just going to be playing, with their head underwater for the rest of the year, trying to get above, and it's just not going to work out because they don't have the goaltending to do it. And I think, again, without Malkin or Crosby to start the year, it's just going to be tough to make up.
Yeah, I have to. I mean, it sucks to have the same exact order, but I have to agree. I think there's a chance that the Penguins could be really bad in the beginning, and that it actually, like, it just kind of snowballs all out of control, and they end up having one of those, like, okay, we know that they weren't that good, but they weren't that bad. Like, maybe they finish second to last in this division, and you go, holy smokes, what happened? I think that there is that chance, but yeah, I when I look at the rest of the division, I don't see how losing Crosby and Malkin for that long, how I can put them ahead of any of these other teams.
Right, and that's the question mark, right? And they still could be, within, 4 or 5 games of a playoff spot or a bubble spot there, but ultimately it's really, there's a lot of those middling teams in this division where I think, you can really roll the dice, and they're not top heavy like Atlantic, where you just look at the, 3 or 4 teams at the top there and you're like, those are no-brainers, right?
Right, exactly. Okay, well, let's go number 5 then.
Yeah, number 5, I think I'm going to have to put the Philadelphia Flyers here.
Okay. Yeah, I really like what the Flyers did on their back end, and I think that Carter Hart is going to have a completely different year. I am kicking the Carolina Hurricanes back to 5. I really like them. I don't like what they did with their goaltending. I think that they made too many changes, and they kind of ditched on what was a good thing. And I think that the Hurricanes, they're not going to be so far out of it that it's like a ridiculous. But I think that they probably finish in that like 93, 94 points and just miss the playoffs.
Okay, wow.
Okay, so that's who I have at 5. Who do you have at? And then I'm going to put Philadelphia at 4.
Okay,
so
fair.
I'll say Philadelphia is that, like, they might be a wild card team, they might not, depending on how good that Atlantic ends up being. But I do really like the changes that they made. I think that they were aggressive, good changes, and whereas Carolina, I think they just like made changes just to be cheap ass, like. No reason that they should have done what they did, and and it's going to end up coming back to bite them. I know it will. That's just what happens.
Okay.
When you make changes for no reason, from what seems like a stupid reason, and I don't think that Antti Ranta or Frederik Andersen can stay healthy. So
okay.
they're going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel of the goalies in that organization.
Alex Lyon, let's go.
That's right. Okay, who's your number 4 in the division?
My number 4, I'm going to put Washington at number 4. I don't have like these teams below them with Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. Goaltending is questionable for me, but I think Washington ultimately has enough power up front to get it done. But again, they're still going to have issues keeping the puck out of the net. Okay,
I've got to go New York Rangers with my next slot there.
At number 3? All right.
New York Rangers at number 3, and that puts the Washington Capitals at 2 for me. And and then obviously I'm going with everyone else. I think the Islanders just have so much depth and such good goaltending that this division being a little weaker than it has been, I'm going to say they take it.
Yeah. Okay. I can't disagree with you. I think the Islanders for me come in at number 1. At number 2, however, I've got the New York Rangers. I like watching this team, and I think guys like Ryan Strome, Zibanejad, being in contract years, they're going to just totally blow up. And Zibanejad, we're probably going to see another 40-point or another 40-goal season. Lafreniere, Kakko, I think they take another step forward, and they've got good enough goaltending and a Norris Trophy defender back there to get it done. And at number 3, I've got the Carolina Hurricanes.
Okay. All right. I like it. Yep. So you've got a Hurricanes New York Rangers rematch of the bubble.
Absolutely.
There you go. That would be fun. I guess that means that I'll have the Washington Capitals and the Rangers there. So that's either way. I mean, there's a rematch somewhere in there. Okay. Well, there's our Metropolitan division. I think for the Atlantic division, not that anyone out there notices too hard that we're over Skype, but good news. We're coming together to record the Atlantic division, especially the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Detroit Red Wings, being those are our teams that we'll spend some extra time on those. And we're doing an in-person show for the first time in like 6 months.
Yeah, something maybe, like yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, Justin, well done. The Metropolitan division is complete. We have one more division left. The NHL season starts in a week. Basically a week Wednesday. We're very, very close. I'm still nervous for some of these teams without their RFAs signed. What's going on?
Well, the big one left is Brady Tkachuk. Let's see what. I mean, he's their future, right? I mean, so why not just give this guy what he wants?
Is he going to get? What do you think? Let's give a Brady Tkachuk prediction here. Maybe we'll get it before the show. Are we thinking $7 million? $8 million?
I think he's gonna get Pettersson money. I think is what he's gonna get. 3 years, $7 million bucks.
I'm wondering if he gets $8 million because you know why? Because the GM, of Ottawa comes out, Pierre Dorian, and he says we're no longer in a rebuild, and Brady Tkachuk's got to go, bro. If you don't give me my money, you're gonna be like a rebuilding team. So you better pay me. I mean, they have the cap space to do it. It's not like their most expensive forward is Drake Batherson, under $5 million. So it's not as if they can't afford to pay him. And frankly, I don't think, at least under the NHL cap, maybe there's an internal cap that we don't know about. But I mean, you're just not going to pay him more than Shabbat. Probably if you pay him $8 million, it's $8 million solid, just like Shabbat. But we shall see, won't we?
Can't wait.
All right. Well, that is our show. You can find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. Let us know what you thought, and we will get with you soon. Have a good rest of your day.